It was normal to live on farms in the 50s. Many people lived in the same house. In 1950, there weren't many apartments in Lena. There was also only one hospital downtown. Someone owned the house and someone else rented a place in the house where they could sleep. It kind of looked like an apartment. It wasn't normal to have a bathroom or a toilet in an apartment or a small house. It was more normal at farms. In the late 50s, someone built their own house, and to keep that house warm, they used wood that they could burn in the furnaces. They had at least one furnace in every room. In a family, it wasn't normal for a woman to have a normal job like they do now. It was more normal for them to work home and take care of the house, to be a housewife. Some of the women work as a nurse, but it was very unusual. The man, on the other hand, was working on farms as a butcher, in food stores, bookstores, crafts, and in banks. It was normal to have 3 children in a family, but families on the farms had more children. The girls started working in the house and taking care of the house at the age of 14. They were working home with their mom and helped her doing the housework. It was not normal to have a car at that time. People were walking around no matter how long it was. But they didn't want to walk too long. So if they walked too long, they needed a car and they needed to borrow money from the bank and buy a car. The family was always together at the evenings and every meal. In many homes, it was a place where there was a lot of music and reading. They had a radio, and on Saturdays they sit around the radio and drank cacao, eating food and listened to detective shows. And in the late 60s, the television came. The families in 1950 used most of their money on clothes and food. Many families had bad economy after the war, and they didn't earn a lot of money in their jobs. They never used money to go on a holiday outside of Norway. They also had to pay the bills. As you can see, with their bad economy, they didn't use the money on other things like toys for the children. The children worked during the autumn in what was called potato vacation, to earn their own money so they could buy their own clothes and toys. The girls worked often in a weaving mill. If the boys had a hard time at school, they started working early. The clothing in 1950 was so much different than today. They weren't or couldn't buy a lot, so the family used their clothes in many generations. The children used the same clothes. The mothers in the family would sew old clothes to new and different ones. And when they bought clothes, they took some bigger sizes than we would, just so they would fit more years, like stock coats and cotton shawls was very normal in these years. They usually nicked their own clothes, and the clothing was so much different from family to family. Families who lived in a huge house and were seen as the best living in the country usually had better and prettier clothes. What kind of expectations did the parents in these years have towards their children? The parents in the lower classes in the society had often lower expectations towards their children. It was different in the upper classes. The parents could be strict and they wanted their children to act politely and nice. In the evenings, the families would sit in the living room or be together. They listened to the radio. They did not have a TV at that time, and they had a lot of family time together. The food in 1950 weren't like today. They didn't have much of foods as we have. They couldn't just walk into a store and buy anything they want. They had ration cards and bought fish, sugar, butter, flour, and cabbage. Sugar and syrup was very normal on bread for the poor families. It was the woman who made all the food for the family. They were like housewives, like I mentioned before. Cars were not directly allowed before the early 60s. Those who had a car were mostly farm owners. The other people in the country used horses in the bigger city, they used bicycles. Today, it's normal to get married between 25 and 30 years. People are getting engaged. Average on how many, it's normal to give birth at the age of 24. The females have the same rights as the male. Almost every woman is working. Now it's more normal to have much of the same duties. And fathers are more active and helpful inside the house than it was in the 50s. The children have not special duties like they had in the 50s. It's normal that the parents do the duties, but of course, they give them some of the duties, but not something specific. It is seen as a normal thing to be divorced in today's society. A lot of children are having stepmothers or stepfathers. They also have toys, a kindergarten. They have just a better life than they had before.